Look what I got my hands on. Boom. 35mm f 1.2 Noctilux. Leica at its finest. So, quick first impressions of this lens is that it might be Leica's best lens to date. In terms of optical quality, this thing rips. It shreds the Nikon 35 1.2. I would say it probably shreds the Sigma 35 1.2. I think the rendering, the fall off, the micro contrast, all that stuff is better than the medium format lenses that you get with Fuji and Hasselblad. There really is no parallel to this lens at the 35mm focal length. Another quick random thing I love about this lens is that it's got a 49mm filter thread, which is a very common filter thread. It's the same filter thread as the Sony RX1R Mark III, the Fujifilm X100VI, and all these other cameras. So you can use all the weird little things, different adapters and filters, and I have like an anamorphic adapter here. I have this like crazy SLR Magic anamorphic adapter I'm going to try to put on there. It was actually made for Fujifilm X100VI, I think, but it'll work on this because it's 49mm filter thread. So just like another thing I love about this lens. So is it the perfect lens? Pretty darn close. I would say the two problems with this lens are one, that while it's quite a bit smaller than the 50mm Noctilux, it's still a big boy. Like, if you compare it to my 35mm King of Bokeh Summicron, my usual go-to 35mm lens, it is taller and a lot wider. This is a fat boy. This is starting to look thin, like it took some GLP-1s. And because of this size, it doesn't quite balance right, at least on an MEV1 or an M11 monochrome with a 35 steel rim on there, also to show you how much smaller the steel rim is to the 35 Noctilux. So this is kind of the problem I had with the 35mm f1.4 Summilux. I had that lens for a while and eventually sold it because I just didn't use it because it didn't fit well on the camera, and it always like sort of tipped it forward, and you couldn't just carry the camera like this in one hand comfortably because of the way of the lens. This Noctilux is like towing that line pretty hard. And I'll probably make a whole other video about this, but I think that something a lot of the big camera manufacturers are missing is that, like, by and large, all I want is a full frame camera with excellent image quality that I can hold in one hand and carry around all day long, just like this, right? Even though this is an APS-C camera, Fujifilm really has this dialed with cameras like the XE4. Like, look, it just fits in my hand so nice, and it's light enough and small enough that I could carry around this camera with me all day long, take it to restaurants, bars, wherever, and no one's gonna bug me. It doesn't look like a professional camera, but it takes professional results pictures. That's pretty much the same story with the M series cameras, right? Like, this works perfectly. The 35mm steel rim and the M11 body just hang out my hand. I could carry this around, probably throw it in a big pocket like a jacket pocket. But then when you get this guy, it starts to get pretty heavy. This would not fit in a big jacket pocket, or at least a lot of big jacket pockets. So I don't know, I'm not sure it's a keeper just because of the size. Like, even though the image quality is stellar, I understand they use new technology to make some of the lens elements, like the FLE lens elements, all that stuff, and it worked. The image quality is phenomenal. But the trade-off of size is really rough. I'm not sure that I would take this out with me. On top of that weight, it's also a very expensive lens, so I'd be a little freaked out to damage it, but that usually doesn't stop me. And then the second problem I have with this lens kind of feels like it's outstripped the Leica cameras out there, right? I think the image quality, and especially the macro focusing capability here, there's like a detent, and it goes from yellow numbers to gray numbers, and those gray numbers are macro numbers that you can only use on an MEV1 because M rangefinder cameras can't see those macro numbers. The macro functionality of the lens works great, and I can confirm using the Z6 III with its big, bright, beautiful 5.6 something viewfinder, you can get tack sharp results with the 35mm f1.2 using an adapter, not unlike you can with this big old autofocus 35mm f1.2, right? But then when you use it on a M11 rangefinder, you can't get there. The focus peaking isn't quite accurate enough to ensure tack sharp results all the time. The back screen isn't quite accurate enough. It's close, but not quite. And even on the MEV1 with the viewfinder that's more accurate than the back screen, it's not accurate enough. I guess I'll have to try it with an SL3 as well, but I don't think it'll be any different. I don't think the viewfinder between this and the SL3 is that different. I've also saw a video that Hugh Brownstone made kind of saying the same thing about the SL3. So in other words, like there isn't a Leica camera body that can fully utilize the capabilities, the sharpness in macro, the razor thin depth of field at f1.2. Like you can't really nail it on current Leica camera bodies. You're better off adapting it and using it on like a Nikon, for example. So that's sort of a problem that like the technology and the quality of this lens now, the super unique features, the reasons you'd buy this lens, those features have outstripped Leica camera bodies. So maybe that's fixable with a firmware update or something, but I just thought that was sort of like a funny, odd situation. Maybe that's why they didn't release this lens with the MEV1. They kind of knew the focus peaking wasn't perfect in the MEV1 yet, and they didn't want that like spotlighted with the sweet macro and thin depth of field of this 50mm f1.2. I don't know. So yeah, I basically just unboxed this lens. I got it like yesterday. I only had one day of shooting with it, so this is very much a first impressions video. But, I'm just excited about it. I wanted to talk about it. And I wanted to get your thoughts and questions about this lens in the comment section below. What do you want to know about this lens? What should I test? What should I compare it to? I've been comparing it to the Nikon 35mm f1.2. And guess what? Even though it doesn't have an autofocus, this is by far the better lens optically. No big surprise there. The Nikon lens is awesome, but this is just a whole other level, a whole other class. But, besides that, like, do you have any comments or questions? Let me know your thoughts below. Like, comment, subscribe to stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!